There are over 1,408 ways to die in room 1408, and today we are going to discuss each and every one of them. Howdy. I'm Jeff Goldsmith, Senior Editor for Creative Screenwriting Magazine, and calm down. It's okay, we're not going to talk about all 1,408 ways to die in room 1408, but we are going to probably talk about a few of them. And it's going to be a lively conversation with this interesting collaboration between co-writer Matt Greenberg and the writing team of Scott Alexander and Larry Karaszewski as they explain how they collaborated in bringing a Stephen King short story to the screen for 1408. And hey, don't forget to go to www.creativescreenwriting.com to find out all about our latest issue, which you could buy on newsstands and at Barnes & Noble and Border bookshops in the US, Canada, UK, and parts of Western Europe. Of course, if you're listening in via iTunes, don't forget to click that free subscribe button so that each new episode is delivered to you automatically. And remember, we post new episodes on Fridays. And as busy as this summer has been lately, you might want to refresh more than once a week your podcatching software to see what we have coming up next, because I think there's going to be a couple weeks where we have more than one episode. But now, without any further ado, let's jump right onto the stage of our sold-out screening for 1408 for our Q&A with co-writer Matt Greenberg and the screenwriting team of Scott Alexander and Larry Karaszewski.
They're still peeing. So
the other two are here in ghost form. Scott, here's Scott. Give it up for Scott.
Just like the draw. It's like the dating game.
This is your life. We're short one screenwriter.
He's still peeing.
He's still peeing. All right, good.
All right.
We're going to talk about him now.
Let's talk right now.
We're going to start where we always start, breaking in stories. Talk about how you got... Yep. Bright lights. Don't look into the light. Talk about how you guys broke in, how you got your WGA card. To my knowledge, you were roommates together at USC, and you decided to write a screenplay. Take it from there.
Yeah, we were roommates at USC Film School, and it was sort of before everyone wrote screenplays. They're actually the writing class at USC.
Before there were writing magazines.
Exactly. You only wrote the first 30 pages. You wrote the first act of a screenplay. You didn't have to. You could graduate from USC Film School without ever writing a feature script. And so we decided to write a script all the way through, which is considered a radical
audience does not
thing.
believe this.
I know they don't. Well, they shouldn't. They're here. And so we did. We were roommates. We lived in Silver Lake, and we had a crazy. We had an idea that was based sort of on a true story, but we made it like a comic variation on it. And
what was the true story? Oh my God! It's Matt Greenberg.
There he is.
So what was the story? What was the true story that you based your first screenplay on?
Story. It was
Larry, pitch home wreckers.
Oh my God! It was the true story was basically a kid who was vandalizing a school got injured, and while he was doing it, and he wound up suing the school district and trying to get money. And so we thought,
and that got into Ann Lander's column,
right?
And all her readers were outraged,
right? But we thought, it would be funny if a thief gets injured while he's robbing a guy's house and winds up suing the homeowner and taking him for everything he's worth through the legal system.
And who did we tailor that script for?
Morris Day and Albert Brooks. That dates us very, very...
And that's how you break in.
That's right.
You write a script for Morris Day and Albert Brooks.
So what was the name of this first one?
It was called Homewreckers.
Homewreckers, okay.
And it sold right as we graduated from school. We graduated, and like 2 weeks later it sold. And so we magically just had like an office at 20th Century Fox, and we had a career. And it was kind of a really weird experience because I'm from Indiana, and I always told my mom that, when I graduate from film school, I'm just going to, get right into the industry. And so she never really believed me, but it actually wound up happening.
And we were very naive about how you get started, and we wrote a script for Morris Day, and so we just bought, the Times' latest album, and we looked on the back, and it said a vinyl album. I think it was the Oak Tree album, and it said who his management was, and we just called them up, and we said, "Hi, we've written a script for Morris Day," and they said, "Really?" And we said, "Can we come in and show it to you?" And they said, "Sure." And it was really, and that's one thing led to another, and then we met somebody, and we met an agent, and it seemed very easy at the time. I mean, it never got made.
Right, it never got made.
That's absurd. That's absurd that you wrote a script for Morris Day to begin with. But that is a great story.
You got to follow your dreams.
Absolutely.
But what that story says is that if you don't write a script that's for Tom Cruise,
don't aim high.
If you don't aim high, you can succeed.
I think you could still write a script for Morris Day these days. Actually, well, so I mean, we're not going to dwell on this, but I've got to know: did Morris Day have any notes for you?
It never got to Morris Day.
His mother didn't like the script. Right. Lavon.
Oh my God, he remembers. Yeah, Morris Day's mother read all of this.
She wasn't into it.
He ran his company or something, but it never actually got to Morris Day. But it got to 20th Century Fox.
So what you're saying is you were not good enough to get to Morris Day?
Nope.
Correct.
Nope.
Back in those days, what would a spec even sell for like that?
Well, Jesus.
If you're able to say.
Now.
No? Okay. But when you graduated, you probably were the first two people out of your class to get WGA cards. So
Yeah,
easily.
Yeah.
I mean,
easily.
I don't know. I can't see a thing here. Right. These spotlights. But if you're younger than us, you probably are. Before 1988, before the Writers Guild strike of '88, people did not write spec scripts. This is not how you broke in. People made short films. People worked as an assistant in someone's office. Writing a spec script and shopping it around and trying to get an agent that way was just a bonkers thing to do. We were the only guys at USC Film School who did this. It was a weird thing to do. And then Larry had the key to the Xerox room, and we broke in at night. We made 50 copies, and we were just giving them to all our friends, saying, "Look, we wrote a whole script." And this was a big deal.
Well, so when did the agent become involved? Just out of curiosity, because we get a lot of people emailing us about breaking in stories. So
I was a TA at USC. We wound up never giving it to Morris Day's people at that point. But I was a TA at USC. There was a guy who was in one of my classes who was interning at ICM, and the junior agent said, who's good at USC these days? She didn't have clients, and so he gave her my phone number. He called us, and we gave her the script, and she brought us in, and so it was like that. It was a sort of, it was using, like Scott's saying, we Xerox 50 scripts, so you gave it to people. I know a lot of people sometimes come up to me, and they're almost nervous about showing it to people. If you have a script, you got to just give it to your friends. You got to give it to people, and hopefully it just keeps rising.
Interesting. Matt, talk about your breaking in story. To my knowledge, you had gone to Yale for medieval studies.
Yeah, really profitable thing I was going to be.
Well, and then you ended up at London Central School for Speech and Drama. So talk about how you got your WGA card. How'd you end up breaking in?
Well,
Speak up just a little.
It was not exactly classy, but it didn't involve me taking my clothes off, so that was good. I actually I wrote my first spec when I was still in New York. I was an actor, and not particularly successful one because I was writing spec scripts, obviously. I got my first agent who was in Oregon, New Mexico. Believe it or not.
Where?
Oregon, New Mexico.
Your agent was there?
Yes, and then later she claimed that she was going to sell it for $1 million, and she had contacts at Universal, and I was like, great, so I was getting the whole thing together and ready to move out, and then I found out from a friend of mine who did work at Universal. It's like, we've never seen the script, and so my writing partner at the time and I were kind of nervous, and we called her up and I said, so our friend says this isn't at Universal, and they were like, well, blah, blah, blah. Why don't you just let me do my job? Click. All right. Hung up from Oregon, New Mexico. Then an hour later she called back and said, I'm so sorry. I should have clarified it. It's not at Universal Studios in California. It's at Universal Studios in Florida. After which point, and of course we were neophytes, so it was like, oh, that makes all the sense in the world. And of course, I'll call my friend at Universal, hey, it's at Universal Florida. He's like, get out of there now! So then I wrote another spec script on the side, and I managed to give it to a friend of mine, or what you guys were just saying. You just give it to everybody, and I gave it to a guy I barely knew at college named George Hickenlooper, and who had just done this movie Hearts of Darkness, and it was a Civil War vampire film, and there weren't a lot of those around, so I figured there was a shot, and that got me out here, and that got made with the proviso. 2 weeks before we shot, he came into my office and said, do they have to be vampires? And at which point I said, we're 2 weeks away. And he said, well, I'm the director. They're not vampires anymore. So it's a Civil War vampire film without any vampires. But shortly after that, I got, I used it as a sample. I got my first studio gig, and that was my entrance into the WGA.
Great. And for genre writing, you later on went on to do the Invisible Man television series.
Yes, I did.
And Scott and Larry, you guys did a lot of great work with Milos Forman. I'm a fan of all that. For the sake of time, we're gonna skip these great paths and go to this movie, because I am really curious how you guys came together here. To my knowledge, in 2002, Stephen King had the story 1408 as a short story on an audiobook collection called Everything's Eventual. Is that correct?
No, Blood and...
Was it?
The book is called Everything's Eventual.
Right.
Blood and Smoke.
Blood and Smoke.
Blood and Smoke. Okay.
Yeah. I think he first started as a writing, as part of an essay on writing, and he just sort of wrote a couple pages of it, and then sort of as an example of how you begin a story, and then fell in love with it, and then used it for the audiobook, and then liked it so much that he actually published it in a book of short stories. So it had 3 incarnations before it even became a film.
Gotcha. Well, so how did the three of you end up together on it? Who started the project? Was it Matt?
Yeah, what happened was Lorenzo de Bonaventura called me up and he said, I've got this really crazy short story by King. Can you have a look at it? And I read it and I was like, wow, this is a great short story. What the fuck do you do with it? Because it's a guy in a room, and they were, and we talked, and they were like, well, we need to, maybe the room part is the first act, and then he goes on and does something else, and blah blah blah. And then I was like, all right. And I thought about it that night, and woke up the next morning. I said, can't we just do a whole movie in a room? And there was this sort of silence, and he looked at me and I looked at him, and then we both started laughing maniacally, and then we were like, well, why don't we try? So I came up with a pitch, we went out with it, sold it to Dimension. I wrote it, I wrote a couple of drafts, and then it was sort of in limbo for a while, and then these lovely gentlemen came on.
What was the status of the project when you guys came on?
I think they just hired
Michael Hofstrom.
Michael Hofstrom had come on,
Right.
and this was, I don't know, September, October '05, and they said they were looking for just 3 weeks of work, and then we just finished on the movie about a month ago.
We worked on this movie nonstop for 2 years. We had always talked about doing a horror film, but nothing ever had really come up, or we never generated an idea that was in the horror genre, and we just always thought we'd be good at it. And when this came along, we sort of really loved the just how the limitations we actually saw as strengths. We love any movie that they say you can't do, and the idea of making it all in one room, making it mostly one guy, just felt like, wow, this could be an exciting project.
When was it decided it would be PG-13? Because that's definitely a growing part of the horror niche.
It was. We were definitely going for an R I mean, Matt's drafts were definitely R.
Yeah.
And then we did a couple drafts that were R. And then sometime during prep, Bob Weinstein had an epiphany in the middle of the night that the movie would be better in the marketplace as a PG-13. And we sort of groused about it for a little bit, but then it was fine, and I think the movie's better for it. And no, the one fuck in the movie that was in the script before Sam Jackson got cast. Yeah, I can show you a dated script. The script was, the guy in this script the guy in the short story is described as a pinkish, pudgy man with a European accent. Mm-hmm. And as Matt wrote him, he was, you're picturing Ian Holm or Michael Caine, and that sounded right to us, and maybe Anthony Hopkins. It's one of those guys, and then we got Cusack, and then we get a phone call from Dimension saying we're going out to Sam Jackson, and we said, really? And then it was a very interesting lesson in screenwriting. We thought, okay, well, if they get him, we're going to have to tailor the script for Sam Jackson. He's not Ian Holm. And then we went through the script sort of page by page, and we didn't have to change anything. It was so weird. We really thought it was going to have to be rewrite. Nothing.
What was so interesting about it, it was a really, I think, a brilliant thing of Dimension's part, was that it's one thing for Ian Holm to tell you, oh, that room is frightening, don't go in there. It's another thing for Sam Jackson. If Sam Jackson tells John Cusack, stay out of that room, John Cusack should listen.
Absolutely. It was also strange for me because he's been in my refrigerator many, many times. But I'm not going to go into that now.
Look, they said, can you put Sam in any more scenes? We're trying to, well, what do we got to work with? You know?
That's good. That's funny.
What doors haven't we opened yet?
You did a good job of getting him in there, actually. That was good. Question, I mean, you did have a tough challenge, just the three of you, if you could answer. You put your protagonist in a room by himself. Was there ever a chance of, bringing a friend with him? Because you did a good job. Well, no, I mean, because it's a studio note.
His buddy George.
That's right. And Buddy George would die sometime by the third act. But you did an interesting thing with the tape recorder, which came into play very importantly for the ending. So when did the idea of him talking to the tape recorder, which is also talking to the audience, come into effect?
I think it's in every incarnation.
Yeah.
I mean, Stephen King talks about the little blinking red light on the mini recorder.
Yeah, I mean,
you have a lot of it.
Yeah, it was in the original story, and it was definitely something that came into play. I mean,
and Cusack really loved it. I mean, so I think we wound up doing a lot with him with it because
he pushes, sort of saying, "That guy, the recorder's my friend. So that's who I get to play off of in the movie." Yeah. It was a good actor note.
Yeah, this was very good. Well, the thing is too is that at least when I was working on my drafts, one of the things that it's an interesting question about, do you bring in somebody else? And the answer is, if you want to be chicken, yeah, but. It was really one of those cases. You had to either go 100% commit to it as a choice and find ways around it, like the tape recorder or not. I mean, the thing that I think we were talking about earlier is that in, like the movie Castaway, Tom Hanks has that bizarre relationship with that friggin', soccer ball or whatever it is. And volleyball, right. And I think I read an interview where he was saying, he and the screenwriter were talking and saying, well, this is kind of a really stupid idea. This could be really silly. But what happened was, and this is in large part to Tom Hanks, he sold it because he so invested his own, emotions into it. And that's sort of what Cusack did here, But having said that, I think Scott and Larry took the idea and really ran with it more about creating this relationship between the man and the recorder. So.
They also sold that volleyball as a limited edition volleyball in stores, just so you know.
Okay.
like a replication of it. But so, you guys have a really interesting protagonist, too, because it's a classic horror setup to take somebody from being a non-believer into being a believer of the supernatural. So, I mean, Cusack's a classic skeptic. People love him. I mean, I think only the kid that he owes $2 to on the bicycle from that movie is the only person that doesn't like him. But
Better Off Dead?
Better Off Dead, absolutely. Sorry, it slipped my mind.
Wow.
So thank you. So talk about that protagonist and his kind of path from non-believer to believer.
Well, I mean, I think that... I'm sorry.
Sorry, no, go ahead.
No, I mean, I think it starts with Stephen King and his initial conception of the character. He was a lot less tortured in the story. In fact, he was much more of just an everyman. And when I started the process, it was about not just believing. It was not just about believing in the supernatural. It was the fact that he was enclosed in, within the metaphoric room of his own psyche. He had blocked off not just, opening himself up to the supernatural, but to love and everything else. And then these guys did a brilliant job, I mean,
what we really tried to do, particularly in that first half hour, is never have him. He's actually never on screen with someone he knows. Mm-hmm. We used to call him God's lonely man. He's just a guy traveling from town to town. You never really see what his regular life is like. We play a lot with his past once he gets into the room, but you know very little about him. So it's hinted, you sort of know something bad happened somewhere, and so we just wanted to really make him as rootless as possible.
And without stating it, I mean, that was Bob Weinstein sort of giving us the freedom, saying, "Look, guys, take your time." I mean, Bob had no fear that the audience was going to bolt out the door if they weren't scared in the first 10 minutes. So he said he doesn't get in the room until page 30. Fine, I don't care. Let's just get a sense of the guy. So we sort of had this conceit, which was you never see him in a home. You don't see him in his home, and you don't see him with anybody he knows. And it's never stated, but hopefully it's just sort of subconsciously the audience has this feeling of this person who's just kind of floating through his life. And then I'd say it's sort of one sort of change we did where Matt had him debunking. We probably made him more cynical. It's the same setup where he absolutely does not believe in these places he's going to, but our guy, we had him just going along with the fake stories. So he doesn't believe in what he's typing. So we just sort of felt like he's completely disconnected from his life, from his work. He's just sort of a broken guy going through the motions.
I mean, it also really is a great way to connect the audience because, I mean, they spend so much time with him, and he's such a likable actor that it really worked. So that's the protagonist. Obviously, the antagonist, you have, a source of evil, and going back to horror films, kind of like The Exorcist, there isn't an embodiment. The room doesn't really talk to him except the phone. Talk about that challenge of writing a force of evils. Starting with you, Larry.
Well, what's interesting is that there are many drafts in which the room did talk to him. There was actually this character, the voice of the room, and as we went through drafts, and even it was shot. There were several scenes where the room talked to him.
Michael tried to cast Roman Polanski as the voice of the room.
Exactly. But the more we started losing it, the more power it seemed to have. And so we decided, that the room was just sort of. What I'm really happy about is how intelligent the room is, and how intelligent Cusack's character is, and how there's never, usually in a horror film, someone does something stupid, but it winds up being like this is like a real chess match between the Mike Ensign character and the room. Mike Ensign's constantly thinking and trying to figure out how to get out of this, how to outsmart the room, and the room is always twisting it back on him.
Guys, anything to add to that, to writing an antagonist like that?
Well, it was. Did you have anything to add?
Absolutely nothing.
No, I mean what was kind of cool about it was in some ways it was freeing because again, most studios notes come and they say, well, we've got to see the actual antagonist, we've got to personify it, we've got to make it something that's apprehendable, but I think, and this is a large testament to Bob, is that they let us experiment and try and do something a little bit more abstract. Something. And one of the great things about it is that in the King story is you never find out why the room is evil. You don't know what happened there or whatever. And Bob let us keep that, and I think that was an important thing.
I mean, I'll say one thing. This movie probably evolved more through production than any film we've ever been involved with. I mean, everything other movie we've ever done, we've never been on any runaway productions where people are writing pages all through shooting. I mean, usually, scripts locked by the first week of shooting, and that's the movie. And it's just everyone was working at such a high level in this movie, and I think just particularly sort of the production design and Michael's compositions and Benoit Delamar, our brilliant DP, sort of the visualization of the room was so good that somewhere during post, I don't even think we were wrapped yet. People started having a feeling that we didn't need the room to have a voice. And the room was a big character in the script. And Michael and Peter Boyle, the editor, started trying, doing cuts of scenes, pulling the voice out and saying, this is working. And look at the script. Are there scenes we'd have to change? Is there, any ADR ideas you got, or any last minute pickup shots we'd have to do to adjust stuff? And so it was a learning curve, sort of all through post. And I mean, there's tons and tons of recutting and experimenting and ADR, because you could do a lot of ADR on this movie because of the voice on the telephone and Cusack wandering around playing stuff on his back, so you could move things around and try different ideas. It was more of a kind of a film school type of experience than we've ever had on a movie before.
Well, I mean, I think it is good that the room wasn't totally defined because, it leaves the force of evil to be more nebulous, and if you shed too much light on it, it probably wouldn't have been scary.
Well, that's actually where that Mr. Olam line came from, because eventually I think somewhere someone was saying, well, why is the room evil? And I think we just said, it's an evil fucking room. It doesn't need an explanation.
Right. No,
and that was it.
So going back for a second on production, so were you guys on set every day? How long was production on this movie?
Well, what's weird about the whole internet world is you don't need to be on the set every day to be hounded by the production every day. They shot a lot of this movie in London, and actually we were in London for a different film for a while, but we were working so hard on the other film that we rarely ever got a chance to do that. And then once we got here, it was insane how cuts and dailies and phone calls and it was a 24-hour, because it was a different time zone, it was a 24-hour a day mess usually, but it was great.
Yeah, and sort of between Bob Weinstein being on New York time and Michael being on London time, yeah, day and night you're on the phone with somebody.
Sorry, you get scared when your phone would start ringing. You look down like, oh my God, Bob Weinstein. It's Saturday afternoon. Why?
We're going to fix the scene again.
But actually, to talk about Bob Weinstein for 1 second, that was another reason why we did the movie. We'd never done a movie for the Weinsteins, and it was a fantastic experience in the sense that we'd never done a genre movie. We thought we'd have to go in there and talk, like the first meeting, we thought we'd have to really, pitch a lot of scary ideas and talk about horror and try to convince them that, we're guys who write, different kinds of movies, that we could do horror. And the first couple meetings, we never even talked about horror. We talked about, like Roman Polanski's The Tenant and Repulsion. We kept on coming back to Repulsion. Bob kept on talking about Hour of the Wolf and Wild Strawberries, all these weird art movies where you'd never have a Hollywood meeting where the studio head is saying, make it like Hour of the Wolf. And so, we were like, oh my God, this is a great gig.
I love Repulsion. That's great that they were bringing that up.
This movie's probably, the Repulsion and The Tenant are probably the movies that this resembles the most.
Talk about the rules for a second. It was interesting because at first the ghost in the room seemed like a threat. You got the crazy guy behind him, swinging at him, people chasing him. But then it seems like they're really not a threat. Like, it seems like, as the room explains later, it's free will. Talk about that concept in which he has to off himself, and those threats eventually really aren't going to do him in.
Well, it's interesting because the people in the ghosts that you see are really, and again, going back to the Stephen King story, there's actually a wonderful moment where he looks at the picture of the boat and he sees all the people, all the guests of 1408, who stayed there on the boat, on the picture. This, in terms of the rule, at least when I was starting out with it, and these guys went with it and did, so much of their own great stuff with it. The whole idea was, again, more of a psychological attack than anything else. It was really almost, I always thought when I was writing, my drafts, I was sort of looked at the room as Hannibal Lecter, essentially, in like those scenes with Clarice Starling, and that the necessity. Okay, why doesn't he just kill him? Well, because that's not what the room is really about. The room, I think, in my belief of it, the room is all about breaking a human spirit, bringing it to the utmost despair, and then consuming it. There was a character in a Neil Gaiman comic that actually sort of inspired that sort of thing. But the whole idea is that it can't kill. You've got to be the one to take that final step off the bridge or off the ledge or anything like that.
Scott, Larry, anything you guys want to add to that about?
Yeah. Also Lorenzo was just giddy about the fact that you could do anything. And after we watched the first cut, the first assembly with him, he just turned to us with this big grin on his face saying, I've worked on 156 movies. This is the first one with no rules. And it was very, sort of that attitude was really liberating. I mean, Bob just used to just push us. It's like, just make this crazy shit, and then we sort of, trying to please him, and then we sort of, came back with the doppelganger scene, and his response was, "What are you guys smoking?" This movie's just like you're stoned for 90 minutes, and that was okay. So it sort of became just sort of being pushed just to go as cuckoo as possible.
Well, it's once again coming back to the limitations actually being freeing, where you just like kept, it wound up being about the process of being in a hotel room. So we try to keep it almost as that whole, the first part is all as realistic as possible. It's what you do when you go to a hotel room, and then slowly those things in the hotel room start turning against you. Like, I'm very proud that I think some of the scary stuff in the movie is 2 chocolates on a pillow or a toilet paper that's been changed, So it's like using the little things at first and letting the movie have a good build. And initially, I think he is right. But it's all about turning you on yourself. It's all about breaking him down. So at first it's little tiny things. Then it becomes sort of physical things. But those things really aren't really hurting him. And then it becomes his child and using his past against him.
And it really sort of became just try to sort of expand stuff as much as we could. So it was Matt's idea to have him think he's left the room and go back to California. And Matt did it very elegantly in one scene, and then Bob said, "Let's just keep going." How long can we stay out? 8 minutes? 10? Can we stay out 12 minutes? And it was just like, whoa!
I mean, you're seeing a truncated version.
There's
a lot more. When he leaves
we
the
shot
room,
so much stuff with him.
And he meets with his publisher. He does.
Oh yeah, Tony Shalhoub has more scenes.
Yeah.
He's making focus. The moment
we wanted people really to think.
The moment I was really proud of in the script, which I thought was a good piece of sort of screenwriting sleight of hand. It's not even in the movie, but it was. He wakes up in the hospital, and there's Mary McCormick, and they talk for a couple minutes, and then we went into the hallway, and her like on her cell phone, like calling back home to New York, saying, "Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to stay here for a couple days." And it was just like shifting POV for 10 seconds.
It can't be a fantasy if she's having scenes by herself.
I thought it was total genius. I think production said, "Why do we have to build a hallway?"
I thought it was great. I thought it was great because...
But people get really pissed off when they think, "Oh my God, it's just a dream." And they go, "Oh no!" Yeah. When my daughter saw it, she was like, "Oh wow!" She thought I had totally.
That really got whittled down. I mean, the first test screening in New York, it was like 12 magnificent minutes outside the room. It was just ridiculous how long we just scene after scene after scene.
Well, it was great because fans of horror.
But then people got really worked up when it went back into the room.
Yeah, I mean they were
betrayed.
Yeah, I think it was just the opposite. They actually felt great when we finally went back to the room, but they felt betrayed for those 10, 15 minutes. And so they thought the movie let them down, and then finally whenever it was revealed that the room was just playing another trick on him, it was okay, but for 10 minutes they were sort of pulled out of the movie and getting back in.
There were a lot more of the what's going on here moments, which is sort of, they all got cut out except for the moment with the waitress. When he's in the restaurant, he looks over, and the waitress for a moment is the lady who jumped out the window.
Yeah, because
we used to have 4 or 5 of those beats, which I thought were really cool, but maybe one.
Because we had to fool you into thinking that's what the movie was becoming. That the movie was now the room is sort of outside,
It was interesting because, it was good that you at least got him out of the hospital room, because for horror fans, that would evoke American Werewolf in London, where he has the dream where he thinks he's okay, and then the hospital, the Nazis attack him from behind the curtains. So,
that's right, where he wakes up twice.
Yeah, so it was.
Oh yeah.
It was great that you guys at least got him out of the hospital, which was great. Talk about, and we're going to open it up to the crowd in a few minutes, but talk about the meaning of the father character. That was kind of interesting. Where were you guys going with that?
We didn't want it to just be about the daughter. We didn't just want everything to be like, oh, he's got one subplot.
We wanted to have lots of problems.
Yeah, and so that we didn't really. Although actually, one version that's shot, it's actually a great scene. When he's out
in California.
When he's out in California, he goes to visit his father at the nursing home, and it's this amazing scene where Dad is actually in a nursing home, and he's like an Alzheimer's patient. And he finally recognizes his son, but that scene alone went on for 5 minutes.
That stuff was all set up. When you saw him in the opening scenes, when he's going through his mail, one of the pieces of mail is a bill from a nursing home. And then he goes and he visits his dad, and his dad hasn't recognized him in years, and then his dad looks up and he remembers him, and it sort of feels like, oh, the movie just ended. It sort of feels like, oh, Michael Lindzen learned his lesson, and he had this connection with his father. Now we can go home happy. And then it's like, and then it goes back to the room.
Was the concept of the daughter in the Stephen King short story?
No, that was Matt's idea.
Because that was talk about just coming up with that briefly, because it was really good, and it was probably the cruelest moment of the room. I mean, making her die twice was really great, and it worked in a PG-13 universe too.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because in the original short story, the one sort of tragedy in Mike's life that he references is the death of his brother. And when I was reading it, I said, okay, we've got to come up with something. And, it is a sort of stock thing to say, oh, he's got a dying kid. Yeah, that's really cool. But the thing is that, I had just had, I'd gotten married. I had a stepdaughter. I just had another daughter. And that, they say write your fears. So, I went with that. The real thing that was very interesting, what happened was, because I had many, many more scenes of them and much longer scenes. And what these guys did was they made it, and you guys can talk about it, they just made it much sharper and much insightful. And yeah, the whole thing,
Well, I think a lot of it, you got out of the room. One of the ways you dealt with being in the room all the time was that you had a lot of flashbacks.
Right.
And so I think what we wound up doing is taking that exact story, but not really using them as flashbacks as much as using it as the room sort of poking him in the gut a little bit, which you did too, but it was much more he would actually see scenes with him and his wife and kid. So we just decided to do a little went a long way.
Right.
That's great. Let's talk about the original ending.
Which original ending?
Well, that's what I'm going to get to. How does the story end? And then I had heard that there was an ending where...
Are we allowed to talk about this before the movie's opened?
No. This is posting in iTunes on Friday when the movie opens, so people won't be getting it. These guys have seen the movie.
Give me a break.
These guys have seen the movie. I mean, I had read that there was an ending where he dies in the fire, and his
there's a couple different versions where he dies in the fire.
Yes, Yes, there are endings where he dies in the fire.
So why make him live? Why does the room let this guy live?
You know what's so funny is we had a lot of test screenings which were very useful, and we'd have a 7:00 screening in New York where he lives, and a 7:45 screening where he dies, and then all these guys would go on Ain't It Cool News, and they're all typing reviews, and they saw different cuts and they don't know it.
Well, so give us that. I mean, so which ending are you guys? Which ending do you guys like? Why did the ending with him living win?
Because I think we all like this ending. I mean, I think we're very, very happy with this ending.
This was
I think
the most emotional ending.
Yeah. What happened was there were. What's weird about these endings? All of them are good, and I'm assuming they'll all be on the DVD. They're all good in different kind of ways. There's a real stony, like Twilight Zone-y kind of ending. There's.
What was that?
Like I said, we really don't want to get into that because then it becomes. I don't want anyone to think that we're not happy with this ending because this ending, but this ending wound up being the emotional ending that you had been with Mike Ensign for so long and been through this horrible thing that the audience really wanted to see him reconnect with his wife, reconnect with his life, and not do it in some kind of sappy kind of way. And by hearing the daughter's voice. You can interpret it a bunch of different ways, but it sort of feels like it wasn't just in his mind. His wife heard it too, and I think the reason why this ending works more than the other endings is John Cusack's performance. John Cusack staring at the camera at that end there was just an emotional feeling you got from that the other endings didn't have.
Well, and it completes the non-believer from the believer course. It's just interesting because in King's The Shining, another hotel that's a little dangerous, he doesn't live. In Misery, another author, kind of a crisscross of.
I mean, he lives in the Stephen King short story. I mean, I think at a certain point we thought, he should sacrifice himself. That the idea that he thinks, all right, the room doesn't let anyone live, but Mike Ensign figures out a way of bringing down the room with him. That he's going to kill himself, but bring down the room too.
I sound like some studio flack saying, "Well, the test screenings taught us the truth, and everything else is bullshit."
Is that what happened? Was that?
It's interesting. I mean, in the story he lives in Matt's draft he lived. Larry and I were working on the script, and he said, "Let's just be naughty. Let's just kill him. This is cool. It's not even going to tell anyone." And we killed him. And then Bob said, "Look, you guys got to cover me. Give me an ending where he lives, just in case." We're like, "Oh, come on," But we did it, and then there was another ending we did where we tried to do a scary ending where he dies, and it's sort of like the scary ending. It was scary, and the audience screamed and jumped, but it's like people ultimately sort of react. It's what touches them, and I mean, I'm sort of analyzing it now. All the endings where John Cusack died. John Cusack is not in the last scene, really. You're forced to sort of hand the movie over to Sam Jackson and Mary and Tony Shalhoub because you don't really have anyone else in the film. And Cusack's a guy. I mean, we've been on the ride with him for 90 minutes, and the audience really likes him in the movie. And they sort of just wanted to have that final moment with him. And so we could throw every trick in the book at them and make them scream and laugh and jump, but they just sort of wanted to connect.
Yeah, what's really interesting is that the scary ending where you jumped out of your seat, it really worked. But the audience, in this movie, it didn't matter that much. It was another thing we always used to talk about is when we first got involved with it, there was the opening scene was kind of scary, and Scott and I decided to sort of not have any paranormal experience until he gets into 1408, so the sense that we felt like we're making a contract with the audience that we're not going to bullshit you. We're not going to the cat's not going to jump out of the closet. It's not when something weird happens, it's going to be happening for real. And the jump out of your seat ending wasn't quite that, but it was cheaper than the rest of the movie.
Yeah. I mean, I think, just picking up on what they were saying, I mean, you do raise a valid point, is, the room's already reset itself and destroyed. How come this act of defiance destroys it? And it's one of those things, if you're looking at it totally, linearly as an actual fact thing, then, there is a problem. But there is something, one of the things I think that the film captured very well was a kind of a dreamlike quality to it. And I think that the reason that Cusack survives in this, at least, through the dream logic, is that he has come to a point where he's gone beyond despair, and especially, in regards to his wife and everything like that, where he has found the inner core of himself, so it's not just so much the single act of the fire, it's something that he's found in himself.
Well, yeah, some people were confused by that, for all the things he tries to do. Why does a fire work? But right. I agree, the room has broken him. We've seen that the room could reset itself, so a fire will let him out this time. But it is interesting. Let's open it up to the crowd for a few questions. Right there, somebody's going crazy in a white T-shirt with sunglasses. Who sent him the postcard was the question.
Which cut?
We'll go with this one.
We never really answered that question. There is a version of the movie, though, that in our script, and actually was shot, that it was Sam Jackson who sent him the postcard. But
there's the shot of Sam Jackson sort of with the cigarette and the brandy, and then there's an insert where he puts the brandy glass down on his desk on a pile of postcards. Yeah. So you could interpret that okay, Sam Jackson was looking for someone to destroy the room, and he chose Mike Enslin. Or you could cut that shot out, and then you don't have to explain it.
There was an earlier
film is a liquid medium.
Yeah, there was an earlier incarnation where you learn a little bit more about the Sam Jackson character, and in fact that he is sort of this gatekeeper that in a weird way his job is to bring people in, but his first thing he has to do, just as a human being, is to warn them. Though he is sort of a vassal to the room, but that sort of disappeared except for
that stuff always wound up almost causing more questions than answers.
Yeah,
Sure.
A friend saw the movie the other night, and he came up to me. He said, "I know who sent the postcard." I said, "You do? Who?" Tell me, please. He said, "The girl in the bookstore." Because I was watching the movie going, why are they lingering on those shots? There's so many shots of that girl who's asking all those questions. She's the one. I said, that's a pretty good theory.
I've read a few theories where people don't even think Sam Jackson's human. They think he kind
of...
They think he's not even the manager of the hotel. He just draws in.
No, I say Sam Jackson is exactly what he says he is in the movie. Everything he says, you can trust.
Well, that is an interesting thing, because there's actually a scene that's in most commercials where I warned you about 1408, Mr. Ensign, which was when the room was being...
Larry was so angry when that line got cut out.
Well, it's a good line. But it's another one of those things where...
It's during the spinning post office.
Yeah. When Sam Jackson arrived there and said that, basically took the package from Mike Enslin, was a part of that scene, once again, you start asking these questions. Well, who is he? Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? What is he? And we really say he's just the manager of the hotel. Mm-hmm. And when he shows up in the minibar, it's just a complete figment of Mike Enslin's imagination. I mean, my favorite shots in the movie is when it just revealed that he's talking to cans.
Yeah.
Well, this movie was fascinating. We just ended up having so many just sort of great philosophical arguments about cinema grammar. It was just really fun.
Give us an example.
Okay, here. And this is, I might be just getting way esoteric here. The shot Larry's talking about, which was in the post office, when the post office starts to break up, and John's like, ah! And he looks over, and the door opens, and Sam sort of peeks out and says, I warned you, Mr. Enslin. And then he steps away, and the door shuts. Well, then, there was a second shot on the reverse of the door. And he shuts the door, and you see he's back in the hallway of the Dolphin Hotel, and you see the back of the door is the 1408 door. And then Sam sort of shakes his head and walks away. And I was irate at that shot. And it was just all these weird arguments about, it's sort of like being back in editing class. Well, what is that shot telling you? That shot is telling you you're now in the point of view of Mr. Olin, who exists outside of Mike Ensign's consciousness in the post office. And so I was getting all worked up, saying you can't cut to the reverse behind that door. You can't show him outside that room. Well, I thought the shot Larry loved, which was the shot of seeing him inside the room, was great. But you couldn't flip the point of view, and then eventually somebody got confused by my note and just cut the whole thing out. I wasn't trying to cut the whole thing out at all.
Well, it is a first-person perspective film.
So these were the sort of arguments we kept having. And it was really a fun movie to be dragged through for 2 years.
Another question. The question was, what was the room's voice? Was it something like Fran Drescher? What was it?
Yes.
Like a
Mike! Well, no, the two people we talked about were Roman Polanski and Max von Sydow, but it never even got to that point. It had.
Was there a temp? I can't remember.
No, well, temp was Mike.
Temp was our director with his Swedish accent doing it.
Yeah, and that probably sunk it right away because it was like,
Michael, you're going to hell. You know.
Yeah.
I'll bet if you went with Andy Rooney, you would have had it. Question right in front of that. Yeah, second to the back row. There you go. Yep. Great question, actually. This does happen a lot. I've seen a lot of bloody arbitrations. I've heard all sides of the stories. It can be very difficult, and a lot of writers have great conflict when there's a rewrite involved. It seems like, for the moment, you guys are pretty blood-free, sitting right here.
Well, it actually wound up being a great experience. We became pretty good friends, and we
cold called Matt.
Right. There is a WGA rule that absolutely nobody follows, which is that when you go on a project, you're supposed to call the original writer, talk to the original writer, and people tend not to do that. And we got involved, and we really liked what Matt had done. We had a lot of things we
thought the script was really cool, and everyone kept saying, "Oh, he's such a great guy. Matt's such a great guy." And we said, "Has anyone called him and told him we're on this?" No, I'm not calling him. I'm not calling him. Right. Nobody wants to make the henchman phone call.
And so we called
just asked for Matt's number and called him.
Yeah. Scott Frank typically does that too. I mean, it's always worked out for him. Matt, what was it like when you found out that news, and what was it like when the three of you actually started talking?
Well, it was funny because actually I had been told, that Scott and Larry were brought on the project, and it was, of course, when you find out you're being rewritten, you're just like, and they said, well, what sucker's rewriting me? And they said, well, Scott Alexander and Larry Karaszewski, and I was like, oh, well, they're good, and it was really, I was like, wow, this is kind of cool, but when they called, it was, I'd heard before that they got what I was trying to do, and that they were essentially, we were of the same mind, which was a good thing. They weren't trying to set it on a submarine, or something like that. And when they called, it was really just very, like, hey, how are you doing? Let's get together. And it was, of course, there's that sort of like, territorial thing. It's just like, well, those commas were mine and blah blah blah. At least from my end. But we just hit it off immediately. And by the way, what they did was very. It's very scary to cold call someone that you're doing. So,
did you guys talk during the production process at all? Would you occasionally, if you ever thought you were?
I think we were your conduit in a weird way. I mean,
you were the only person talking to me.
Because the mention and the producers weren't talking. So we would call them after every test screening, I think, and just sort of fill in. We always would tell you what was going on.
Yeah. All the test screenings were in New York, so there was a lot of flying back and forth to it.
Yeah.
So we would get back and then check in with Matt.
But what I think is very interesting, and this is going back to your original question, is that in terms of the ethics and everything like that. I mean, it pays to be polite. There are certain situations where it is more difficult to call. Like say for example, they decided to set everything on a submarine. It might have been like a little bit more difficult, but. what was nice about this experience, and I think extended beyond us to everybody else, that we all felt we were doing the same movie, and a lot of that, Stephen King had laid such a great base, but the fact that we were all pulling together as opposed to pulling apart and trying to do 8 different things, that was it.
No, it's great, and it's very rare.
Yeah, Matt was sort of very gracious about it. Because we've had tons of miserable experiences where we've been rewritten, and you just sort of have an out-of-body experience when you get that draft. And we have a project we worked on for years that a new draft just came in by somebody else, and we don't even have a desire to even see what the guy did, just because it can be just so disorienting to see your work now in a different form.
Are you able to say what project that is? Could I guess?
I was trying to come up with a quick pun, but...
Sounds like Karl Marx.
No.
Okay, good.
Who? Please.
No.
Anybody?
I hope no one rewrites the Marx Brothers script. Are you able to say?
It
doesn't matter.
All right, good.
I was about to say it, but
I had to
don't
ask.
care.
Right there, you sir in the middle. Sorry to repeat the question. The concept of the wall saying "Burn me alive." His question was it only because Cusack had finally become unselfish, or did the room really want to kind of have itself ended too?
I think it's both, which is kind of cool. The "Burn me alive," I don't really even know where that came from. I think that was just set
Not
deck.
a clue.
To be quite honest, I think that was literally the production designer putting that there
in London.
Yeah, because it really came out of nowhere. But actually, it didn't come out of nowhere. Someone did it, and it became a focal
Somebody
point.
wrote that.
Someone wrote that. But it definitely has that feeling, and that's part of the Mr. Rowland, well done, Mr. Enns, and the whole idea that the hotel would love to, would love to have the evil taken care of, and in a sense, that is the room giving him a clue as to how to kill it. But it's only because you presented your question as an either or. It's only because Cusack finally does his unselfish act.
All the way in the back, did you have any access or any interaction with Stephen King?
It was offered to us a couple times. We never
knew what to make of that. Yeah. Bob would say,
You should call him up. You should call Stephen. He would love to talk to you guys about this new idea. We'd say, what are we? We're not going to call Stephen King. I don't have his phone number. What do you?
Yeah. Michael Hofstrom talked to him, I think, once, and our drafts would get to King, and we'd get like the thumbs up or thumbs down, and he really liked our drafts. And
he was
very,
supportive,
very
but that was about it
with the film. But we had no interaction with him.
Matt, when you started the project, did you?
Only, I wrote him a letter after, because he had responded. I had sent him my draft, and then he'd responded that he liked it, and I sent him a letter saying thank you, and basically groveling before his greatness. But other than that, it was
easy to do. Time for one or two last questions.
Follow up, I think.
So, all the way there, sir.
No, he had 2 questions.
Yeah, I know. We got to keep moving around here. You could ask afterwards.
Oh my God!
Right there, you sir on the aisle.
This poor man.
Question was, were there a lot of changes made to the Insland character after Cusack was cast, or did the script pretty much stay the same?
John had great notes. John had lots of weird non sequitur phrases from the short story that he thought were really cool that should go into the movie. He really pushed us to play up the recorder as his buddy. And it probably gave us a real freedom to sort of run with the humor, because John is so great at mixing the comedy and the drama and playing everything for real. But he was just a superb piece of casting. Yeah. So when we heard we got him, that was the guy on the page.
Yeah, because you didn't want an action hero-y kind of person. You needed an everyman. And he's not quite an everyman, but you just feel you're just inside his head for the whole film.
Just as a point of interest, the first person, one of the first person they were talking to, I don't know if they ever got to any kind of deal, but originally it was going to be Bruce Willis. So think how different the movie would have been.
Yeah.
Live free or die in room 1408. Okay, all the way in the back. Wait, hold on. Let me repeat the question. Could you talk about your involvement with Stephen King's Cell? Eli Roth is supposed to direct that. What is the status of the project right now?
We sort of just finished our first draft. Eli Roth has decided to take a long vacation, away from film, and so
At least according to his MySpace page, he has.
exactly. So I don't know if Mr. Roth will be a part of it. So we'll see. We shall see.
Okay, then.
Maybe Eli will call tomorrow morning and clarify things for us.
Who knows?
Matt, future projects?
Bob, I think Bob announced last week the movie was going, didn't he? At the premiere. So maybe it's shooting.
I can't wait to see what you guys do next.
We like
Matt.
the script.
I'm adapting C.S. Lewis's Screw Tape Letters, and then after that a book called Firestorm, which is neither involves fire nor storms, but the other guy wrote it. So.
That sounds great. And just because we talked about it earlier, Scott and Larry, got to ask, what is the status of the Marx Brother project? I think it's a great script. I would love to see it on the screen. Anything you could tell us?
Eli Roth is directing it. Strangely enough. Stabbo. that great Marx Brother.
I'm sure Mr. Roth would do a fantastic job. You had told me about, and you don't have to tell about this if you don't want to, but you told me about,
you know what's cool is people have never seen Margaret Dumont's entrails before.
You had told me about another project you're working on.
That's primarily our day job these days. We have written a film for us to direct that's very much in line with Ed Wood and Larry Flint, and it's a strange biography and we're very close to getting that made. So that'll probably happen very soon.
Could you give us more info about what the biography is about?
It takes place in sort of the modern art world of the late 50s, 60s, and it's. But I don't.
No, we're not. We're sort of being discreet about it.
We're being very quiet. That's one of the
we're
problems.
being discreet.
Is that when we do announce these projects, or it becomes like 10 years later, people are asking whether the Marx Brothers movie is going to get made. So we don't want to have that burden on this project.
Can I just sing their praises? I've read the script. It's brilliant. So. Thanks.
Thanks, Matt.
The pitch you guys gave me a week ago I thought was brilliant, so I can't wait until you do make it. Hopefully we'll have you back. You guys have been very generous with your time. Let's give it again. Up again for Matt, Larry, and Scott.
And that's how the Q&A went down. Thanks again to co-writer Matt Greenberg and the screenwriting team of Scott Alexander and Larry Karaszewski for spending time with us at our Q&A. Remember, if you dig this episode or the podcast in general, consider tossing a virtual tip into our PayPal virtual tip jar by visiting www.creativescreenwritingmagazine.blogspot.com and look for the PayPal icon. Your tips will allow me to buy equipment, hard drives, mics, and a mixing board that could work in the field, actually, is what I'm looking for now. And will definitely help out. Feel free to drop me a line anytime by emailing me at yo.goldsmith@gmail.com, and thanks for all your emails. I am actually still responding, so just remember when you write in to give me a few days to respond, as a lot of emails have been coming in. But it's really fun to hear from all you folks around the world and find out what cities people are tuning in from. It's kind of a trip. I'm Jeff Goldsmith, Senior Editor for Creative Screenwriting Magazine, thanking you again for tuning in and telling you to stay out of trouble. Till next week.